Welcome to this episode of the People Dividend. I'm your host, Mike Horne, and I am absolutely delighted to have in our virtual studio today Jesse Guenther, who is the Vice President, Client Delivery at Allegis Global Solutions, the leading global provider of MSP, RPO. Now, all of our colleagues in HR and finance are going to know all about those terms, and we'll hopefully dig into them in a little bit. Procurement and direct sourcing solutions, again, at Allegis Global Solutions. Jessie began her career with Allegis in 1997, starting in recruiting, sales, management, and organization development, and she transitioned into a program leader role to implement and manage a portfolio of clients in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. She later moved to Seattle, built one of the most complex MSP clients in the Allegis portfolio, and helped to expand that business from U.S. into Canada, mainland Europe, the U.K., and India. Certainly a pretty traditional progression in terms of globalization. Jessie and her family moved to the U.K. in 2012. She built and led the operations in the EMEA region for Allegis. After 5 years abroad, she relocated back to the U.S., where she serves as a member of the AGS Executive Board and leads North American operations. In addition to her numerous business roles at AGS, Jessie is one of the founding members of Allegis Group's Diversity and Inclusion Council and an advocate and spokesperson for women in leadership. She currently lives out near Annapolis, Maryland, with her husband and 2 sons. And you can find out more about Jessie on her LinkedIn profile. But one of the things that you do on that profile, Jessie, just before I let you say a few words about yourself, is you also introduce yourself there in 4 words: leader, wife, boy, mom, and optimist. So again, welcome to the People Dividend podcast. So glad to have you here. And why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Mike. It's nice to see you again, and it's certainly a pleasure to be here. I appreciate you setting up the time for this discussion. You did a nice job of, man, you sort of lay it all out, and I think, wow, that's a lot. I've never heard it sort of repeated back to me. But I am, the headline is who I am at home. I'm married. I've been married for 25 years. I have my 2 sons. I have a senior in high school right now, so we're in college selection mode, and a freshman in high school. And being a mom is my greatest accomplishment for sure. And I've spent the entirety of my career at Allegis Group in some form or fashion. I find, I consider myself very lucky. I found it by luck, and built it through, a lot of grit and hard work and failure and getting back up again. But I've gotten to take my family on my journey, as you talked about in that intro, and it's been the absolute highlight of my life. And we as a family got to take advantage of some really incredible opportunities. So we continue to do that. I'm not done yet. I learn every day. But have really, really enjoyed my career thus far.
It's so interesting, as you described your leadership journey there, to talk about grit and learning from failure and getting up again. I think those were all words or concepts that you used in that. And I think it's unusual to hear outside of, lecture room on management and leadership, or a seminar on management and leadership, to hear that about that expression of things. So do you pass that quality along to your team and those that you influence in a big system like Allegis?
Absolutely. I would love to introduce you to my team. I think if they asked you to talk about, or asked me to describe what is the thing that Jesse talks about all the time, and it absolutely is getting out of your comfort zone. I believe in risk taking, and I believe that failure shapes us. And I think it's if you're not failing, you're not learning. I think if you're not failing, you're not growing. And my team has heard me say that in some form or fashion for as many years as they can remember, and certainly as I can remember. So it's a primary tenet of my leadership for sure.
I've had the good fortune of working with executives all over the world, particularly technical executives, scientists, engineers, who often embrace so much failure in their work, for that one great result or innovation that might result in some patent or patents. And to think about failure in that context is one thing, about producing it for the sake of innovation. How do you bring that to your leadership? Because, hey, sometimes when I get disheartened or disappointed at work because of some failure on my own part, I find it difficult to get back up. What's your grit? What's the
Yeah,
secret there,
it's interesting,
Jesse?
and I've done a lot of exploring on it. And let me be clear, I've not always been great at it. The early part of my journey was very much about pretending like I knew the answer to everything. If I didn't, I hid it, and I hid it really well. And fake it till you make it. There is some element of that that works, but it only works up to a point. Some of the most powerful lessons I learned was being able to, there's bravery in saying I don't know. Um, so those
Hmm.
early days were hard because failure hit hard. It builds up a defensiveness. There's a propensity to lean on excuses, and that just you don't get very far. And if I reflect on some of those moments where I had a moment in my career when I was demoted. I had moments in my career where I was making lateral moves that led to less money for periods of time. Things that in the moment were really hard. Um, that upon reflection,
Right.
and hindsight is hindsight for a reason, were some of the biggest growth moments. And there is something in me, certainly the way I was raised. Um, that's where the
Right.
grit comes from. I had to work really, really hard as a young kid and growing up. So there's no doubt that the who I am contributes to I have a sign in my office. I'm looking at it right now. It says fall 7 times, get up 8. Um, that just makes sense to me. It always has made sense to me. How fast I get up it's faster now. It used to take me a little while. I used to sit on the ground, and sometimes I would cry, and sometimes I still do. Um, but I've built the resilience and an understanding through repetition that I'm going to get through it, and I'm going to get better as a result.
So great. Some say that you learn the most about yourself by the jobs that you turn down, or the job offers, or the opportunities at work, the plum assignments that you turn down. You learn the most about how you want to direct the significance of your career and your life. But let's talk a little bit about the employment market and the evolving employment situation across the world. What do you continue to see for 2025? How are you approaching it with your clients in a world of employment that it continues to evolve and change?
It's volatile. There's no doubt about it. And, we're coming off of a couple of years, certainly in our industry, that it's a little bit unprecedented. 2021 was a boon.
Correct.
That was a time post COVID that our industry hadn't seen for a really long time, and everyone took advantage of that. And finding the norm after that has been a challenge, I think, for everyone that lives and works in the workforce space in some form or fashion. 23 and 24, tough years. And 2025, we're obviously coming into new administration. So that's always, comes with a little bit of uncertainty for sure. Um, Unemployment is fluctuating. GDP is
Mm.
fluctuating. So I personally think that we're going to have a stronger year in 25 than we did in 24, but I don't think it's going to be a V recovery. I think we're going
Mm.
to see a slow U shape, for lack of a better analogy. We're here for it. We're thinking very differently about delivery. And we're fortunate here at Allegis Group to have a very robust, very mature delivery center model. So we're looking at how can we maximize talent in the right places in the world. So really doubling down on our right shoring strategy, and what automation is allowing us to do, building in a ton of efficiency. So we're taking advantage of that too. So it's one of the most rapidly changing periods of time that I can remember in my 30-year career. And we're going to try and take advantage of it rather than cower and sweat.
Right. What are so many in our audience are human resources leaders or touch human resources functions, human capital functions in organizations in some way. What are some of the things that you're hearing from global HR leaders or from local HR leaders about their challenges today in the talent market, in the employee resource market?
The cost is king right now. So there is
Mm.
certainly a lot of focus on how can we do this in a more cost efficient way. And that oftentimes begins with reduction. So we're seeing, a little bit of that in pockets. And then they're also looking to really optimize from an automation and efficiency standpoint. So we're well positioned because we can advise, and I think that's really important. But the TA, what TA is focused on, you'll never see them, at least not in my experience, falter in terms of quality of talent. Very, very important. But how can we maintain quality? How can we look at that right shore, near shore, and because remote work has proven successful, where is the concentration of the talent that these TA leaders are looking for that might not be located in their usual places? Where can they hire the talent that they need to get the work done? A lot more gig work happening, so they're getting more creative with independent contractors and gig, which is exciting. But the emerging technologies that are responding to that, it's a lot to navigate. So
Yeah, I agree, and that's in part why I wrote my recent book, The People Dividend. There are a number of forces at work, including the gig economy, the advances in AI, the permanence of variable work locations and hybrid work arrangements, and other influences at work that really create a need to uh, solve the employee engagement crisis in so many ways. Jesse was unaware of this when we initially met, but I was in one of my HR leadership roles. I was part of a review and assessment team of Allegis, and what I always recall from that experience was how tailored their services were to our needs and how responsive the team was, and did a really exceptional job at listening to our ever-changing needs and to be responsive to those. So I was this chance opportunity that Jesse and I had to be where I had to be a guest on the Allegis podcast, Subject to Talent. We discussed this, but it really is a quality that I think comes through in the Allegis services and the care to which they exercise a relationship. And I want to take that right to the DEI question that I know so many of my clients and organizations are interpreting in their own ways, some emphasizing the volume on DEI, some saying it's so emotionally charged they're following a lot of advice from attorneys about staying away and recrafting employee policies to remove language that some find divisional. So what are your thoughts on all that? And I want a personal opinion, not an opinion of AGS, if there's really a personal opinion on that, which I'm sure going to reflect in some sentiment in your leadership.
Absolutely. What I personally feel and what is reflected in where Allegis stands on it is our commitment is not changing. Our commitment to make sure that our workforce is reflective of the communities that we work, that isn't changing one little bit. I think that absolutely, and because I work with so many customers, a lot of the Fortune 100, there are definitely, to your point, at a point in their journey where some of the language is changing. There is certainly a legal component that they're having to cross T's and dot I's, and we're supporting that wherever we can. But what I've appreciated in all of the conversations that I've been in with them is that their commitment is the same as well. It's not a change to their approach to recruitment, to exposure, to advocacy, to ensuring access. But language is changing, and I don't know yet. We're early days on what are we going to see on the other end of that. What I've encouraged my teams to do, and what I've done myself, is read beyond the headlines. I've been frustrated with the clickbait stuff. You see a headline, XYZ company is getting rid of, and then you click in it and you read in, and it's like, that is actually not what's happening. So that's the stance I've been taking just when I'm having conversations with what is some, frustrated employees who are thinking, what's happening? Is my career going to be impacted? And my advice is, let's slow down. Let's read, beneath the headlines, and truly understand whether it's a client-based decision or, where Allegis stands. So it's going to be interesting as we continue down, throughout 2025, and whether it's administration based or other. Again, the optimist in me believes that humanity prevails.
It's interesting. Recent guests on the podcast, Fred Miller and Judith Katz, long-term practitioners, scholars in the field of diversity and inclusion. They coined in their book 40 some years ago called the inclusion breakthrough. But it's always it's interesting to me to and in that recent conversation on my podcast with them, language may change, and we will continue to have differences at work. And the ability of a leader to harness those differences, we know, pays dividends in innovation and teamwork and esprit de corps, and helps people use their discretionary efforts. So dealing with those differences certainly won't go away, and organizations and leaders who continue to work on those will receive the benefits we know that come from them. So as you continue to think about 2025, as you continue to think about the HR environment, the global HR environment, the space for talent acquisition, if you were going to give our audience, and think about them again as HR leaders, one or two pieces of advice about where to focus their considerations and where to focus their energies in the talent acquisition world, in the human capital world, what would that be? What would those one or two pieces of advice or guidance be as they forecast the remainder of 2025?
Yeah, great question. And I think one of the things that we're talking to a lot of HR leaders, CHROs, CFOs. We're seeing a lot more synergy between functions within our client base, and that's an encouraging thing. So that's kind of number one. I think when we work with companies that have very siloed strategies, the HR org and TA needs to achieve X, and the finance and procurement org, needs to achieve Y, and then you've got the, what's the CEO strategy over here? Those things can oftentimes clash with each other. So having seats at the table for all, whether you have partners involved or not, I think that's really important. And where we're seeing real advancement is when you've got those teams together. And one of the things that some of the more progressive companies are talking about is starting with the work. What is the work we are trying to get done? And then how can we get that work done? I think traditionally you need X number of full-time employees. You might need some supplemental external workforce, whether that's contract employees or the gig, economy, or independent contractors and so on. Start with the work, and then build a strategy around that. And I think that the companies that are doing that well are finding better cost efficiencies. They're certainly finding better talent. They're seeing more engagement because it's married up to what they're trying to get done rather than trying to fit into a predefined notion of what they need in order to get the work done. So it's a minor shift with big implications.
That's so a great insight, Jesse. I saw that evolution in my career as well. Being on a number of HR leadership teams, or not only HR leadership teams, but business leadership teams. I used to sit around the leadership team meeting and hear the finance report, but it eventually evolved to a situation for the last CXO that I supported, is that when we met with the finance team, it was the CXO and me, because so much of the impact of what we were dealing with was dependent upon workforce and people costs. And so it, for those, HR used to just talk about having a seat at the table, but now I think there's more criticality in this partnership and these synergies that are created across all aspects of the business. So such a great area for our community to continue to focus on. And I really appreciate, again, all of the insight you've provided, Jesse. And if you were to leave again, now I'll turn this to the more personal side. Like one parting comment, given your grit, your determination, your leadership, the strength of your career development, what would you say to our audience to motivate them into the second half?
I think that business relationships, I don't think I know this actually, business relationships are still relationships. And I think that if we focus on that, the human aspect of building relationships, it's just easier to get hard work done when we're creating connections. So, that's the way that I think about every interaction that I have is, just creating a genuine interest. And then mutually together, we can just achieve a whole lot more. It seems simple saying it out loud, but it is tougher in practice, particularly when we often can compartmentalize personal and work. I just find I'm a lot happier when I blend them together. So that's how I'm going to continue to move through 2025 to focus on experience versus title, because I've done that my whole career. And if I'm looking at enhancing my experiences and adding to my knowledge and learn, everything else follows. So.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Jesse. I really appreciate that. And again, we've been in conversation today with Jesse Guenther, the Vice President of Client Delivery at Allegis Global Solutions, and you'll find out more about her in the show notes and how to be in contact with Allegis Global Solutions. So once again, Jesse, thank you so much. And until the next episode of the People Dividend, stay well.
Thanks so much.